Tutsi Juwin. On a certain evening in spring, beneath the western gate of the Tang dynasty's capital, Luoyang, there was a young man gazing absent-mindedly at the sky. This young man was named Tutsi Juwin and was originally the son of a wealthy family. However, he had spent his fortune and now found himself in a pitiable state, struggling to make ends meet. During that time, Luoyang was a thriving city without equal in the world, bustling with people and vehicles on its streets. Under the radiant evening sun that covered the gate like a sheet of oil, the hats of elderly men, golden earrings of Turkish women, and colorful reins adorning white horses flowed continuously, creating a picturesque beauty. Nevertheless, Tutsi Juwin remained leaning against the gate's wall, staring vacantly at the sky. In the sky, a thin crescent moon faintly floated amidst the hazy mist, resembling a faint mark on a fingernail. The day's ending, I'm hungry, and it seems there's nowhere to stay tonight. Maybe it would be better to throw myself into the river and die rather than live in such misery. Tutsi Juwin had been entertaining such aimless thoughts. Suddenly, a one-eyed old man appeared before him, seemingly out of nowhere. Bathed in the light of the setting sun, casting a large shadow on the gate, the old man gazed at Tutsi Juwin and asked arrogantly, "What are you thinking?" "It's me. I have nowhere to sleep tonight, so I'm pondering what to do." Tutsi Juwin replied honestly, lowering his eyes in response to the abrupt inquiry. "I see. That's pitiable," the old man said, seemingly lost in thought for a moment. Then, he pointed at the setting sun's light falling on the street and said, "Let me tell you something good. Stand in this evening sun now, and when your shadow is cast on the ground, dig at the spot where your head's shadow falls in the middle of the night. You'll surely find a cartload of gold buried there." "Is that true?" Tutsi Juwin exclaimed, raising his eyes in astonishment. However, what's even more mysterious is that the old man had disappeared by then, and there was no trace of him anywhere. Instead, the color of the moon in the sky had grown even brighter, and a few restless bats were fluttering about above the bustling street. Tutsi Juwin became the wealthiest person in all of Luoyang within a single day. Just as the old man had advised, he had looked at his shadow cast by the evening sun and dug at the spot where his head's shadow fell in the middle of the night, revealing a mountain of gold. With his newfound wealth, Tutsi Juwin quickly purchased a grand house and began living a luxurious life that rivaled even Emperor Xuanzong's. He procured Lonling wine, imported Longan meat from Guizhou, planted peonies that changed color 4 times a day in his garden, kept several white peacocks, collected jade, embroidered silk, had sandalwood carriages made, and had ivory chairs custom made. His extravagance knew no bounds, and it would take too long to recount all the details. Upon hearing such rumors, friends who had previously ignored him on the streets began visiting him morning and evening. Their numbers grew by the day, and within half a year, in a city filled with talented scholars and beauties, there wasn't a single person who didn't visit Tutsi Juwin's home. Tutsi Juwin hosted extravagant feasts for these guests every day. The description of these feasts is too long to recount, but even when summarized briefly, they included Tutsi Juwin pouring Western grape wine into golden cups and a magician from India swallowing a sword while 20 women, 10 adorned with jade lotus flowers and 10 with agate peony flowers in their hair, played the flute and zither, creating an entertaining spectacle. However, no matter how rich one is, there is a limit to one's wealth. Gradually, even the wealthy Tutsi Juwin began to face financial difficulties within 1 or 2 years. People, being fickle as they are, started passing by his gate without even a greeting as he became poorer. Finally, in the 3rd year of spring, when Tutsi Juwin had become as penniless as before, there was not a single house in the vast city of Luoyang willing to offer him shelter. Worse, no one would even give him a bowl of water. One evening, feeling hopeless, Tutsi Juwin returned to the western gate of Luoyang and stared at the sky as he had done in the past. Once again, the one-eyed old man appeared from somewhere and asked, "What are you thinking?" Tutsi Juwin, looking ashamed, kept his gaze lowered for a while without responding. However, the old man kindly repeated the same words as the day before. So, just as before, Du Zijuan timidly replied, I have nowhere to sleep tonight, so I'm pondering what to do. I see. That's pitiable. Let me tell you something good again. Stand in this evening sun now, and when your shadow is cast on the ground, dig at the spot where your shadow falls on your chest in the middle of the night. You'll surely find a cartload of gold buried there. The old man said this, and once again, he disappeared into the crowd. From the next day onwards, Du Zijuan became the wealthiest person in the entire realm once more. Simultaneously, he resumed his extravagant lifestyle without any restraint. The peonies in his garden, the white peacock sleeping among them, the magician from India swallowing a sword, all of it returned to how it was in the past. However, no matter how much gold there had been in that cart, within about 3 years, it had completely vanished. What are you thinking? The one-eyed old man came before Du Zijuan for the third time, asking the same question. Of course, he found Du Zijuan once more beneath the western gate of Luyan, gazing absent-mindedly at the crescent moonlight breaking through the mist. Me? I have nowhere to sleep tonight, so I'm pondering what to do, Du Zijuan replied. I see. That's pitiable. Let me tell you something good again. Stand in this evening sun now, and when your shadow is cast on the ground, dig at the spot where your shadow falls on your chest in the middle of the night. You'll surely find a cartload of. Before the old man could finish his sentence, Du Zijuan abruptly raised his hand to interrupt. No, I don't need money anymore. You don't need gold anymore? Ha ha, it seems you've grown tired of extravagance. The old man said, raising a skeptical eyebrow as he fixed his gaze on Du Zijuan's face. It's not that I've grown tired of extravagance. It's that I've grown tired of humanity. When I became incredibly wealthy, people flattered and followed me, but once I became poor again, they wouldn't even show me a friendly face. Thinking about that, even if I were to become wealthy again, it wouldn't amount to anything. Du Zijuan explained with a discontented expression. Upon hearing Du Zijuan's words, the old man suddenly burst into a grin. I see. No, you are a man with a discerning eye, not fitting for a young man. So, do you intend to live peacefully even in poverty from now on? Du Zijuan hesitated for a moment but then raised his determined gaze and, almost pleadingly, looked at the old man's face. I can't do that either in my current state. That's why I want to become your disciple and learn the ways of immortality. No, I won't hide it. You must be a morally upright immortal. Only an immortal could make me the richest man in the world overnight. Please, become my teacher and teach me the mysterious arts of immortality. The old man frowned for a while in silence, as if pondering something, then smiled again and said, I am Iron Crown Monk, residing on Mount Ma. At first, I made you rich twice, but if you want to become an immortal, I will gladly accept you as my disciple. Du Zijuan was overjoyed, no, ecstatic. Before the old man could finish speaking, Du Zijuan pressed his forehead to the ground and bowed repeatedly to Iron Crown Monk. No, there's no need for excessive gratitude. Whether or not you become a distinguished immortal depends entirely on you. Nevertheless, let us first go to the depths of Mount Ma together. Juwan straddled it as if riding a horse. Then, as if by magic, the bamboo staff transformed into a dragon and soared into the vast spring evening sky, heading in the direction of Mount Ma. Du Zijuan trembled with fear as he timidly looked down. But below, he saw nothing but green mountains bathed in the light of the evening. The western gate of Luyan, he could not find anywhere. It had probably disappeared into the mist long ago. In no time, Iron Crown Monk, with his white hair fluttering in the wind, began singing loudly. Playing in the North Sea in the morning, in the evening, to San Wu I go. Inside my sleeve, a green snake hides, bold and fearless, it coils around. Thrice to Yuyan I've been, yet no one recognizes me. With a cheerful chant, we soar over Daunting Lake tomorrow morning. The bamboo carrying the two soon descended to Mount Ma. It appeared to be a wide, flat rock overlooking a deep valley, but it seemed much higher than it actually was. In the empty sky, the North Star hung down like a teacup-sized radiant object. Since this was a remote and rarely visited mountain, the surroundings were eerily quiet, and the only sound audible was the rustling of a twisted pine tree clinging to the cliff behind them. Upon their arrival on the rock, Iron Crown placed Du Zijuin beneath the cliff and said, "I am now going to ascend to the heavens and meet with the Queen Mother of the West. During my absence, you must sit here and wait for my return. Most likely, once I am gone, various demonic entities will appear and attempt to deceive you. No matter what happens, you must not utter a word. If you utter even a single word, you will never become an immortal. Is that clear? Even if the heavens and earth were to split, you must remain silent," he cautioned. "I understand. I will not utter a word. I will remain silent even if it costs me my life." Du Zijuin replied, "Very well. Hearing that puts my mind at ease. I will now depart," the old man said. With that, the old man mounted his bamboo staff and disappeared into the night sky, almost as if he had been whittled away from the mountains. Du Zijuin sat alone on the rock, gazing quietly at the stars. After about half an hour had passed, and the cool night air began to seep through his thin clothing, a voice suddenly emanated from the sky. "Who is there?" it demanded, without a hint of politeness. However, Du Zijuin followed the teachings of the immortal and remained silent. But a while later, the same voice sounded once more. "If you do not answer, be prepared to forfeit your life." It threatened sternly. Of course, Du Zijuin continued to remain silent. Then, as if out of nowhere, a fierce and gleaming tiger suddenly leapt onto the rock, its eyes shining brightly. Simultaneously, the branches of the tree above Du Zijuin's head rustled violently, and from the top of the distant cliff, a white snake as thick as a 4-liter barrel descended rapidly, its tongue flickering like flames. Despite these threats, Du Zijuin remained perfectly calm, not moving a muscle. The tiger and the snake seemed to eye each other, both vying for their prey. After a moment of tense standoff, they simultaneously pounced toward Du Zijuin. Just as it seemed he would be either bitten by the tiger's fangs or swallowed by the snake's mouth, the two creatures, like mist, vanished into the night wind, leaving only the pine tree on the cliff to rustle its branches as before. Du Zijuin breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew that more challenges might arise. Just as he anticipated, a powerful wind suddenly arose, and inky black clouds covered the entire sky. Purple lightning split the darkness, followed by deafening thunder. But it wasn't just thunder, torrential rain poured down as well. However, Du Zijuin sat unperturbed amidst this tumultuous weather. The roaring of the wind, the splatter of the rain, and the incessant flashes of lightning filled the air. The storm was so intense that even mighty Mount Ma seemed as though it might crumble. Yet, through it all, Du Zijuin sat there, calmly waiting. Then, a violent gust of wind swept in, and the pitch-black clouds were torn asunder. Astonishingly, countless divine soldiers filled the sky, brandishing spears, swords, and other weapons, ready to storm in his direction. Du Zijuin instinctively covered his ears and prostrated himself on a flat rock. However, when he opened his eyes, the sky was clear as before, and the stars of the Big Dipper, the size of teacups, were still twinkling brightly above the towering mountains in the distance. It appeared that the violent storm from a moment ago was nothing more than a mischievous trick played by the elusive and magical nature of the Iron-Crowned One, just like the tiger and white snake. Finally feeling relieved, Du Zijuin wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and sat back on the rock. But before his breath could fully settle, this time, a majestic god in golden armor, standing at a height of 3 jag, around 9 meters, appeared before him. The god held a trident in his hand and, with a stern look in his eyes, suddenly pointed the trident's tip towards Du Zijuin's chest, scolding him. "What in the world is this? This Ma mountain has been my dwelling place since the ancient times of the creation of heaven and earth." Moreover, without hesitation, Being the only one to step foot here, you cannot possibly be just an ordinary human. So, if you value your life, answer quickly, he said. However, just as the old man had instructed, Du Zijuan remained silent, sealing his lips. Why do you remain silent? You won't speak. Very well. If you won't, then do as you wish. In that case, my attendants will tear you to shreds, declared the divine general, raising his trident high and beckoning towards the distant mountains. Suddenly, the darkness split open, and to Du Zijuan's surprise, countless divine soldiers filled the sky like clouds, brandishing spears and swords, seemingly ready to descend upon him. When Du Zijuan witnessed this scene, he felt an urge to cry out in astonishment but quickly remembered Iron Crowned One's instructions and remained silent with all his might. The divine general, seeing that Du Zijuan showed no fear, grew even angrier, if not more so. You stubborn fool. If you won't answer, then prepare to lose your life, just as promised. The divine general shouted. With that, he raised his trident and thrust it toward Du Zijuan's chest, ending his life. The laughter of the spirits echoed through the now overcast and gloomy Mount Temei. Of course, at this point, the countless divine soldiers, like the night wind's sound, had disappeared into thin air. The North Star continued to shine coldly above the rock. The pine tree on the cliff still rustled its branches, just as it had before. But Du Zijuan had long since ceased to breathe, lying on his back on the rock. Du Zijuan's body lay on the rock, sprawled on his back, but his soul quietly slipped away from his body and descended into the depths of hell. Between this world and hell, there exists a dark passage called the Abyssal Path, where the air is constantly filled with frigid, ice-cold winds. Guided by this chilling breeze, Du Zijuan drifted through the sky for a while until he arrived at a magnificent palace called the Shinra Palace, adorned with a lofty gate. Before the palace, a multitude of demons, upon catching sight of Du Zijuan, swiftly closed in on him, leading him up the steps. At the top of the staircase sat a king, clad in pitch-black robes and a golden crown, glaring sternly at his surroundings. This could only be Yama, the king of hell, as rumored. Du Zijuan knelt down before him, filled with anxiety. Why were you sitting on top of Mount Temei? Yama's voice thundered down from the platform above. Du Zijuan hesitated, ready to answer the question, but he suddenly recalled the warning of Iron Crown, never utter a word. Consequently, he hung his head in silence. Yama, in response, raised an iron scepter high and bristled his beard fiercely. Why do you not speak? Speak the truth immediately, or I shall subject you to the torments of hell. Yama's voice was resounding and fearsome. Still, Du Zijuan remained as silent as ever, lips unmoving. Seeing this, Yama, the king of hell, immediately turned towards the demons and gave them some stern instructions. The demons all bowed respectfully at once and, in an instant, carried Du Zijuan aloft, flying up towards the palace of the god of the underworld. As everyone knows, hell consists not only of mountains of swords and pools of blood but also features valleys of scorching flames and seas of extreme cold, all beneath a pitch-black sky. The demons, one after another, cast Du Zijuan into these various hells. Du Zijuan suffered unimaginable tortures, from being impaled on swords to having his face burned by flames, his tongue torn out, his skin peeled off, being struck by iron pestles, boiled in oil cauldrons, having his brains sucked out by venomous snakes, and even having his eyes devoured by vultures. His suffering seemed endless, as he endured every conceivable torment, yet Du Zijuan remained steadfast and resolute, never uttering a word. Even the demons themselves were left dumbfounded by his unwavering silence. After flying through the night-like sky once more, they returned to the front of the palace of the god of the underworld, where they placed beneath the stairs just as before. Then, they collectively reported to Yama, the king of hell, saying, "This sinner refuses to speak no matter what." Yama furrowed his brows and contemplated the situation for a while. Eventually, he seemed to have an idea and said, "The parents of this man must have fallen into the realm of animals. Hurry, go fetch them here. One of the demons swiftly ascended into the sky on the wind. In the blink of an eye, he returned, riding 2 beasts and guiding them down to the front of the palace of the god of the underworld. Upon seeing these beasts, Du Zijuan was neither surprised nor unsurprised. The reason being that, although the 2 creatures were emaciated and looked like wretched horses, their faces bore an unforgettable resemblance to the faces of his deceased parents. Listen here, why were you sitting atop Mount Ma? Yama threatened. If you don't confess immediately, your parents will suffer greatly. Even when faced with this threat, Du Zijuan remained silent and steadfast. Such stubbornness. This man seems to care more about his own convenience than the suffering of his parents in the animal realm. Yama shouted with such force that it seemed the Shinra Palace would crumble. Strike him, my demons. Crush these 2 beasts, his father and mother, into pieces. Yama commanded the demons in unison. The demons promptly responded, brandishing iron whips. They encircled the 2 emaciated horses, mercilessly lashing at them without a hint of remorse. The whips sliced through the air like dragons, tearing the flesh of the horses indiscriminately. The beasts, now transformed into the suffering souls of Du Zijuan's parents, writhed in agony, their eyes welled with blood and tears, letting out mournful cries. Do you still refuse to confess? Yama inquired, pausing the whipping for a moment to prompt an answer from Du Zijuan. By this time, both horses, their flesh ripped apart and their breaths fading, lay prostrate before the steps. Despite the gruesome sight, Du Zijuan remained steadfast, tightly closing his eyes as he recalled Iron Crown's words. Then, at that moment, he faintly heard a voice, almost too feeble to be considered a voice, reaching his ears. Do not worry. No matter what happens to us, as long as you can find happiness, that is all that matters. Even if the king says anything, please do not speak. It was undoubtedly the voice of his dear mother. Overwhelmed, Du Zijuan could not contain his astonishment. One of the horses, gazing at him with sorrowful eyes, seemed to be his mother. Even in the midst of such agony, his mother's heart was filled with concern for their son, and she showed no signs of harboring resentment. It was truly a noble and selfless resolve, one that surpassed even the richest of the rich, who flattered when wealthy and remained silent when impoverished. What a commendable determination! Du Zijuan, forgetting Iron Crown's warning, rushed to her side, holding the half-dead horse's neck in his arms, and with tears streaming down his face, he cried out, "Mother!" Upon hearing that voice, Du Zijuan realized that he was still standing beneath the western gate of Luoyang, bathed in the evening sun. The hazy sky, the white crescent moon, and the constant flow of people and vehicles, all of it was just as it had been before he set out for Mount Ma. How about it? You becoming my disciple may not have turned you into an immortal after all. The one-eyed old man said with a smile. I haven't become an immortal, indeed. But strangely, I feel somewhat glad that I didn't. Du Zijuan replied, tears still glistening in his eyes as he instinctively clasped the old man's hand. Even though you may have become an immortal, I cannot remain silent when I think of my parents enduring the whip in front of the Shinra Palace in Hell. He continued. If you had remained silent. Iron Crown suddenly adopted a solemn expression and stared intently at Du Zijuan. If you had remained silent, I would have ended your life then and there. You no longer have any desire to become an immortal, and getting rich was bound to wear thin. So, what do you think you should become from now on? Iron Crown asked. No matter what, I intend to live a human life, an honest one. Du Zijuan's voice carried an unprecedented, cheerful tone. Don't forget those words. Well, from today onwards, I won't cross paths with you again. Iron Crown said as he began to walk away. But he suddenly stopped, turned to face Du Zijuan, and added, Oh, I just remembered. I have a house at the southern foothills of Mount Tai. I'll give you that house along with the land. You can move in right away. I bet the peach blossoms are in full bloom around the house by now. he said with evident delight.